Coming up on Network Africa. Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi pardons 700 political prisoners. French President Emmanuel Macron signs over €2 billion infrastructure contract with Kenya. And Boeing grounds its entire global fleet of 737 MAX aircraft after investigators uncovered new evidence at the scene of the fatal Ethiopian Airlines crash. Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin today in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the President Felix Tshisekedi has pardoned 700 political prisoners. This presidential pardon is seen as a major gesture of reconciliation since he took office in the troubled nation in January. The 700 were sentenced during the rule of his predecessor, Joseph Kabila, who refused to release them despite a deal struck with the opposition in 2015. The president's chief of staff, Vital Kamahi, broke the news of the pardons to the nation after President Tshisekedi signed the decree, delivering a promise he made earlier this month to do so during his first 100 days in office. Now, President Emmanuel Macron is still on a 4-day visit to the Horn of Africa, and this time he's in Kenya. While in Nairobi, he has signed an infrastructure contract worth more than €2 billion, including a €1.6 billion 30-year concession for a Vinci-led consortium to operate a highway between Nairobi and Mau Summit town in the Nakuru County of the country.
French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in Nairobi on Wednesday to a grand welcome at the Nairobi State House by President Uhuru Kenyatta before a bilateral meeting.
The President of the Republic of France, His Excellency...
Earlier today, Mr. Macron led delegates at the One Planet Climate Summit in a minute's silence for the victims of the Ethiopian airline crash.
Let me first perhaps say this is very special to all of us, because a few days ago, because of a crash between Addis Ababa and Nairobi, a lot of people died. A lot of people being part of the United Nations, part of NGOs, French, Canadian, Ethiopians, Kenyans, a lot of nations, and a lot of these people were involved in this fight. And if you allow me, I want first to have a thought for them and present my condolences, and perhaps to have all together a minute of silence for all of them and these losses.
President Macron and counterpart Uhuru Kenyatta hosted a joint news conference where they spoke about infrastructure projects aimed at improving urban transport and meeting climate change targets.
Mr. President, your visit signals our shared commitment to foster our bilateral relations and engagements within the region in various ways which will deepen, expand, and strengthen our bonds of friendship and cooperation for the mutual benefit of our peoples.
Macron's government plans to phase out electricity production from France's remaining coal-fired power plants by 2022 as part of domestic measures to curb carbon emissions and global warming.
I think we have a lot of things to do together. You delivered tremendous results regarding the fight against climate change. Your mix now is based on more than 70% on renewables. I want France to work closely with you. That's why we will sign together by tomorrow morning a series of MOU compliant with this strategy, an MOU on infrastructure, an MOU on blue growth, but as well I want France to be a clear contributor to your strategy on grid efficiency in such a context.
Both leaders also visited Nairobi's central train station, endorsing infrastructural cooperation with both countries. Mr. Macron had also visited Ethiopia, where he agreed a military cooperation accord with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
Joining us now is Abi Agina, a Kenyan journalist who has been following the president's visit quite closely. Abi, with President Macron in the country, what's the mood like?
And Kenya is trying to bolster trade ties with its various trading partners. And of course, right now, the various regional countries are also looking up to this particular visit because the commitments that the French president will be making in Kenya will be having a ripple effect within East Africa, not just Kenya.
Well, he has signed over 2 billion euros infrastructure contract. What impact is this going to have on the economy?
Our French president has seen the two presidents, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta and President Emmanuel Macron, sign deals in the billions of euros. And so far, we know that they have signed 7 agreements. This will have a big impact on the economy. And some of the key areas that will be topping the list of where this money will be going to is in the manufacturing sector, as well as health, environment, not forgetting transport, as well as another critical component is security. President Macron assured Kenya of his commitment towards supporting the fight against terrorism and extremism, which President Uhuru Kenyatta also sought support from the French president. And one of the other big projects that will be coming out of this funding is the Nairobi commuter rail, where the French president also assured investors that they'll be looking towards setting up a private-public partnership agreement that will see Kenya get a modernized railway system that will ease congestion in the capital city.
President Macron also spoke about climate change. He actually praised President Kenyatta. What other commitments were made as regards to climate change?
The big conversation right now is sustainable cities, and as you know, President Macron had addressed the United Nations General Environment Assembly, and of course this comes at a time where African countries are struggling with the climate change effects that have seen this taking a big impact on food security on the continent. And President Macron also pledged that his government will be channeling some substantial funding that will be going towards improving the fight, in supporting climate change mitigation plans for the continent.
Abi Agina, Kenyan journalist, thank you for giving us an update on that story. Well, back here in Lagos, residents at Itafaji are still lurching under the shock of the collapse of a 3-story building yesterday, March the 13th, which left some occupants, including school children, injured. Here's the aerial view of the Itafaji on Lagos Island, which is notorious for congestion, narrow streets and old structures. After the building collapsed, hundreds of people filled the area, some of them assisting in efforts to rescue school children and others trapped under the rubble. The crowds, coupled with the congested nature of the area, made rescue efforts rather difficult. That's the aerial view. As at the last count, over 40 people have been rescued and those injured taken to hospital. Building collapse is a frequent occurrence on Lagos Island due to weak enforcement of regulations on old structures. Let's head over to our correspondent now, Olu Phillips, who is at the scene. Olu, give us a situation report. What is happening on scene?
It's the day after the sad event that took Lagos to a sad moment for victims and authorities. And we are still here. It's been a long day of work for us and for everybody, all the stakeholders who came up here today. Let me tell you at this point that rescue operation has officially come to a close. If you remember, to my left, we had a tractor and some other big moving machines that were helping in the rescue operations. Right now, they've all left the scene of sight, and we can also tell you that we are now on ground zero as far as the rescue operation is concerned. There are no more hopes of picking up any more bodies or rescuing any more persons because now there's been a pile-up of the rubble. So what you see is just a heap of the rubble that has been assembled, waiting to be excavated or removed from this scene. The operation has officially come to an end, Tenny.
So what informed this decision, and isn't there going to be anything done to help retract the bodies that are still stuck under the rubble?
There aren't from the officials and the professionals who know, there aren't anybody's still trapped beneath the rubble. There is no rubble right now. What you see is the gathering of debris from this side, because a structure was pulled down here in front of me to allow for this tent you're seeing. This canopy behind me is one of the canopies that will be set up here for relief materials. And this rubble you see was moved from this side of the road to that side, allowing for relief materials and tents for victims and victims' family to come around and have some relief material. So this canopy is in anticipation for what will be a setup for victims and those who want to come pick up relief materials. That's why you see this canopy behind me. Now, when we spoke to officials earlier, they said to us that they have actually hit ground zero. When you hit ground zero, you have gotten to the base of the rubble, so to speak. You are on the ground, and so there aren't any more bodies, as we are told, that are trapped beneath any rubble, because there isn't any rubble. Everything has been cleared off. What you see heap here was moved, or a little shanty that was demolished here and moved this way, so they can make way for kind of a relief material center. Tenny.
Important question. Do we now have an official figure of the number of people rescued and lives lost?
For the various stakeholders, of course, when this happened, it started like trickles. We saw members from the Lagos State Emergency Service. We saw those of the federal. We saw state government officials coming up. We saw Red Cross. We've seen all of those stakeholders. And now, because rescue was on before, as first responders, before the official responders came up, it's difficult to tie that on now, and the officials are also running away from giving you an exact figure of how many people were rescued, how many lost their lives, as it were. But what we do know, I can tell you authoritatively, is that the Ministry of Health has been saddled with that responsibility, and we've been told they will release an official document to that effect to tell you how many people exactly were rescued and those who lost their life as far as this collapsed building is concerned. Tenny.
Giving us an update on that situation. Well, we'll be taking a quick break now, but when we come back, we have Yinka Oyeneji, an African Affairs analyst, to discuss more on the Lagos building collapse, but still ahead as well.